Hello and welcome to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed, the podcast where you get quick, practical information about a hot topic. Looking to keep up with the rapidly changing HR landscape? MRA has got you covered. In the time it takes to make a cup of coffee, you'll gain insights on hot topics and pressing HR issues. I'm your host, Rebecca Jacobs, and we're so glad you're here. Now it's time to dive in. So of course, I have to start with a disclaimer. I'm an employment law attorney who is now general counsel for MRA, but nothing in this podcast is legal advice, and you should always confer with your own attorney before making any decisions. Today, we're going to talk about overtime and how the Department of Labor has issued a proposed regulation which will increase the minimum salary threshold. So what exactly does all that mean? What it means is that, as you know, the Fair Labor Standards Act says, two main things. One, you have to pay every worker at least minimum wage for every hour worked. And second, if a person works more than 40 hours in one work week, they are entitled to overtime pay calculated at the rate of 1.5 times their regular rate. But there's a subset of workers in our workforce who are exempt, which means that they receive a salary. It's the same amount every week, regardless of quantity or quality. They are performing the duties of an exempt individual. That could be, for example, most commonly known ones, the executive duties, the administrative duties, the professional duties. So they're getting a salary, they're performing those duties, and then their salary must be at least at the salary threshold set by law. So the Department of Labor, the current threshold is $35,000, $568 per year. So you can have an employee who is earning $35,000, $568 per year, and they receive that weekly salary, same amount regardless of quantity or quality of work, and they're performing the duties of a manager. That's the executive exemption. They are regularly overseeing, managing the work of, or managing 2 or more full-time equivalent employees. I could spend an entire 5-minute feed talking about the administrative exemption. It's very complicated, but professional, think of lawyers and engineers and architects and doctors. So this is why doctors don't receive overtime, because they fall into that professional exemption duties. But anyhow, so the current salary threshold is $35,568 per year. On September 7th, 2023, the Department of Labor proposed increasing that minimum salary threshold to, at the time, the numbers worked out to be $55,068. But by the time the rule is implemented, because it hasn't been fully finalized yet, it was open for public comment until November 7th, and the Department of Labor is diligently reviewing all of those comments and may make some tweaks to the rule before they make it official. It's not official yet, but by the time it becomes official, that number may actually be up to over $60,000. Now, why is there a difference? Why are we looking at a moving target? It's because the new regulation sets the standard salary level at the 35th percentile of weekly earnings of full-time salaried workers in the lowest wage census region. And that number will be updated every 3 years using that same percentile. So you can see how, if this rule passes, our minimum salary threshold is going to be constantly inching up every 3 years. So we'll have 3 years of stability, and then there will be a change, and then another 3 years with that new number. Department of Labor estimates 3.4 million employees are currently exempt under the current threshold, but that they would lose that exemption when the regulation goes into play. What are an employer's options for those workers? First, you can increase their salary to that threshold, around $60,000. That may not be practicable for all situations. It may not be within the market pay or bandwidth for that individual, and we'd be looking at potential pay compression issues. It may not be in the budget. So that might not be a great option, or it might be something for you to consider with your leadership team. A second option is to reclassify that employee as non-exempt and then pay overtime. You have various options to manage that. You could say, okay, we're going to limit everyone's hours to 40 and below. Or we're just going to go ahead and pay that time and a half for every hour they work over 40 if they happen to work over 40. Some employers may even think about changing the individual's base pay because there's some predictability as to how much overtime they'll be working, and they can do the calculations beforehand and think, okay, well, if I change their base pay to this is how much overtime they work, time and a half, brings them back up to this amount, which is the amount they're currently making under their salary. So there are a lot of options, a lot of administrative challenges, potentially morale issues if someone is dissatisfied with going from being salaried to now being hourly. So a lot of things to think through, but it is a very large looming change on the horizon, and we will definitely come back with additional information as we see how the final regulations play out. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for listening to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed. For this episode, be sure to reference the show notes where you can sign up to connect for more podcast updates. If you have questions, you can connect with MRA's hotline team by emailing infonow@mranet.org or calling 866-474-6854. Check out other MRA episodes on your favorite podcast platform, such as MRA's 30-Minute Thrive. And as always, make sure to follow so you don't miss out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll have another hot HR topic in 2 weeks.